Refuse you knew that need you to move back at least 10 feet from where I'm standing at. Refuse you knew that need you to move back. Watch your back and watch your mouth. You better not come back or knock you out whenever. Get out my way, I ain't here for the platitudes. See this chip on my shoulder? I got an attitude. You don't wanna be the reason that I make the news. Turn the other cheek and play it cool. Be made a fool if you try and stop. A raging bull in a China shop. I'm paid in full, now it's time to shop. You ain't even qualified to be engaged in rivalry with the likes of me. If I was Siamese, I would cut you off and still survive indeed. Better mind your beeswax with a day's loaf, you ain't trying me. You got a problem? What's beef to a carnivore? Descendant of Sun Tzu, master the art of war. Cowboys behave and be good. Man, I can make Clint Eastwood go and practice priesthood. You done picked the wrong day to wear white. Me against 20 of you, a fair fight. Refuse you knew.
Wow, okay, awesome, we're on. Well, hey everyone, thank you for joining today's Joy to be our ancestors Q&A with all these people here today. This showcase was sponsored by the Pacific Islanders and Communications, and we're just really excited to have everyone here today. And we'll also be answering audience questions, so please type in your questions in the comment boxes below. So if everyone could introduce themselves in 1 to 2 minutes, that'd be great. Jelena and Havani, do you mind starting?
Sure. Do you want to go first? Sure. Aloha aina, verina mai me ke aloha nui a kākua pauloa o wau o Havane, o mauna awa kia ku'u mauna o ko hako hau ku'u ka Hawaii a pu'u kapuai me noho i ku'u aina kulaiwi, aloha no kākua pauloa. Aloha, my name is Havane, my mountain is Mauna Kea, my river is ko hako hau, and the land that raised me is pu'u kapuai me on the island of Hawaii. I am very happy to be joining all of you in this space. Mahalo nui.
Aloha kako, my name is Jelena Keen-Lee, and I'm a filmmaker and director of Standing Above the Clouds, which follows Native Hawaiian mother-daughter activists that are standing to protect the sacred mountain Mauna Kea from the building of the world's largest telescope. And Havani is one of those women, as well as a really phenomenal singer and songwriter. So we're so happy to both be able to join you all here today.
Oh, that was beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Brayson, do you mind going next?
Man, really? But okay. That was also a really cool Philly intro thing. That was a cool song. Hi, I'm Bryson. I'm from Hawaii as well. I directed a movie called Kapiko a few years ago, and I'm very grateful that it's still screening anywhere. And I'm very grateful to be screening with all of you and to be, still having life for this film. And Havani is my classmate actually from high school. I don't know, but it was a couple of years ago, like two or three. And no, I have nothing else to say. That was really great, everyone. And I'm happy to be here and answer questions.
Oh, thank you, Bryson. And it seems like all of you kind of know each other. At least 2 to 3 degrees apart. That's amazing. And Amalani, do you mind going next?
Kia aloha nui a kākou, kia ora koutou. O wau o Emalani Case no Hawaii mai au. E na e ke noho nei wau mā te whanganui a tara nei mā Aotearoa. Aloha, my name is Emalani Case. I'm originally from Waimea on the Big Island of Hawaii, but I currently live here in Te Whanganui Atara, also known as Wellington, in Aotearoa. And yes, I believe the connections are very, very close. Havane is my cousin. To say that, I think, is an understatement. She's my dear sister, and yeah, it's a joy to see her here. And I love the fact that even though we're across time zones, we're all very much connected. So thank you. And I'm also part of the Cancel Rimpak collaborative poem. Mahalo.
Thank you. This is beautiful. This is probably the most beautiful filmmaker and team introduction I've ever heard. So thank you for that. So to begin, I have a few questions for you. I'm wondering what inspired each of your films, because all of your films, they just focus on a lot of joy, a lot of empowerment, a lot of crossing time and healing. So transforming grief and pulling power and drawing power from our ancestors to feel our activism or healing or moving us forward in our personal lives. So I'm wondering we're wondering what was the inspiration for each of your films? Oh, anyone is free to start.
I can start. For me and for Standing Above the Clouds, it was really about documenting history as it's happening to make sure that the future generations will know that they come from a line of powerful women warriors. And I think a lot of times, our movements aren't really covered that well or that in depth. And when they are covered, usually it's the men that get all the recognition. And we've seen this, throughout pretty much every movement in every different ethnic group, every different group. It's always kind of like the male activist names that we remember or that get put down in the history books and that are taught in schools. So the film is really an effort as part of like a whole new wave of media that I think all these films and a lot of the other films that are in the festival are speaking to, that depicts things as they are in efforts to make sure that this is remembered for generations to come of, these are the kind of women that you come from, and that this is the power that you can draw upon when you're facing challenges, whether they're, a little thing in day-to-day life, or you do find yourself on a front line, like facing off against, the military or the police or whoever it may be. I don't know if you want to say about your inspirations for Standing.
I'm just really grateful to be a part of it and to see the other women that are on the front lines get to tell their story, and to also be able to see a new generation with Mehana's daughter come up into this realm, having been on the front line in her mama's womb, having already chanted and danced from the get before she even came out into this realm. Like, to know that this is documented, this story is documented, and it's generational, is so powerful. And so I'm just so grateful to Jelena and to Amber for choosing to come and help us tell the story about Mauna Kea.
Thank you.
The Cancel Rimpak poem, what really inspired it was, if you're not familiar with Rimpak is the rim of the Pacific military war games that happen in Hawaii every other year. Many of us have been against them. We're against them every single year, but the fact that they were allowed to happen in 2020 during a global pandemic was just unacceptable. Of course, activism and standing against something like Rimpak made difficult by the fact that we are living in this global pandemic. And so when a group of us in Hawaii called the Cancel Rimpak Coalition, now called Koa Futures, when we came together to think about how we can stand against Rimpak this year, an idea was proposed that we write poetry. And I personally love poetry. I write poetry partly because, for me, poetry, as the amazing Black American scholar Robin D.G. Kelly says, poetry is an emancipation of language. It's a scream in the night. It's a revolt, right? Poetry allows us to see the color of the sky, he says, when the sky is covered in clouds, it allows us to dream. So when the idea of a poem came together, one of our members, Joy Enimoto, the amazing Joy, helped me to contact some poets, and then I contacted other poets, and we wanted to bring people together from across Oceania to speak out against these military war games in poetic form. And so what I did is I gave all of the poets the first few words, "In a world without," and then I said, just dream from there. In a world without Rimpak, in a world without militarization, in a world without colonialism, in a world without racism, go for it, write what you dream, what will be enabled by the cancellation of these really oppressive colonial structures. And that's what came together. So we put the poem together, and as you can tell, we're all in different places. We're all filming ourselves on our devices. It speaks to the realities of 2020, but also speaks to our endurance and our persistence and our resistance despite all of those difficulties. And so that was the inspiration behind that poem. And Mikey Inouye, who's not on the call, but I hope he can jump in, is the one who took all of our separate poetic pieces and responses and was able to put them all together. And one of the reasons, I should add, that we wanted to get poets from across Oceania and Indigenous poets from across Oceania to be part of this is to reiterate the fact that RIMPAC as a military war exercise happening in Hawaii has implications for all of us. It's not just something that happens to Hawaii, it is something that reinforces settler colonial, racist, militaristic structures across the region and across the world. And so that's what that poem was for. And I'll stop now before I start ranting a bit more. I'll hand it over to you, Bryson.
My film, I mean, it's a narrative film that I very fortunately a few years ago, I was part of the Sundance Native Labs. So it was developed with Bird Running Water and his team. And it was really born out of my love and affection for Taika films, his early work in New Zealand, and seeing how he made Boy as a real response to, Once We're Warriors, which was also a great film. But to him, he was like, we're not a monolith. We are funny. We have all these different characteristics, and Native Hawaiians are the same way, I think. I have friends who are stellar actors who are Native men who are always being cast to play like a drunk husband, and they have to beat someone up or yell at their kids, and it's a weird thing. And I wanted to see a portrayal of actually Native men that was much more nuanced, and I got to give a couple of great actors the opportunity to cry a little bit, which I think we don't see too often. And sorry, it's raining right now. I hope it's not loud. It just started raining, but yeah, so that was really born out of that, and just showing that we're not a monolith, and there's a lot of different versions of who we are, and we can be funny and we can be sad and all these things. So it was really born out of that, and just loving Taika, which now everyone loves Taika, but it's been a long time for me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you all. Wow, your answers are very moving. So yeah, thank you. And my next question to draw from your answers is, all of your films, a lot of them involve a lot of trauma. So they involve death. They involve militarism, settler colonialism. They just involve a considerable amount of trauma. And we're wondering, how did you find joy and meaning in this trauma? How did you find meaning in the suffering in order to promote joy for yourselves, your communities, your target audiences, other communities, and and for future generations?
Well, I guess we could start again if no one else wants to say. So for us, this is the 15-minute version of the film that we really wanted to use for outreach and to be able to use in classrooms and to explain about the movement as it's still going on. And then we're also working on a feature-length version of the documentary, which will go more in depth into the day-to-day lives of protectors like Havane, and then also like more about the challenges and the struggles and the trauma like you're talking about, and also about the joy. And I think that's the main thing that we hope is a takeaway of like the power of the joy of sisterhood. And that really all it takes to accomplish anything is to just have like a small hui of sisters who have your back no matter what. And then, you know, you can stand for a mountain for decades. You can do anything that needs to be done. And I think in this time, particularly when, you know, we're at such a turning point in the nation and in the world, you know, there's so many things that need to be stood for, whether it's demilitarization, you know, whether it's, you know, all these different things. So we hope that the film acts as a reminder of like, you know, you can get involved in any way that you want to about anything that moves you to stand, but all you need is that like circle of sisters that can get you through that and can remind you of the joy and help uplift you when you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we don't really get to see a lot of that, you know, in regular media when we're talking about decolonizing, we're talking about oppression. We don't really focus so much on our stories of joy. And one thing about Indigenous people, I believe that we are just so funny. You know, BIPOC people were hilarious, and we literally survive off of our wit and our willingness to still harness joy, even in the hardest and harshest of moments. Like, I can still remember being on the front line and looking at Mehana and just knowing, like in the twinkle of her eye, that we were okay. And we were okay because we're still calling on every single moment that we laughed, every single moment that we released and cried, every single part of our sisterhood and friendship is rooted in our shared love for happiness, because this is what we want to pass down. We want to heal through this work and not just from it. And so in order to do that, we have to hold on to every single moment that we smile, every single win, because every time we have one piece of news coming out that's discouraging, we have to have a memory that says we can still do it and we can still achieve Ea together. And so I'm so grateful for the amount of laughter that we have, especially in creating Standing Above the Clouds. It's so healing, it's medicine.
I'll just pick up on that about joy being medicine, because I think joy is also, it's medicine, and it's a necessity. Joy is what motivates everything that we do. If we look at RIMPAC as an example, standing against RIMPAC, I think it was like a 7-month-long campaign that many of us were involved in just this year. That doesn't even include all the other years and the ongoing stand against militarism in Hawaii that is our lives. It's depressing work. It takes a toll. It's heavy. It's crushing. But in all of that, I always maintain that we have to be hopeful and we have to be joyful, not only to take care of ourselves, but because I think hope and joy are responsibilities. If I don't have hope for a future and if I don't maintain any kind of joy, then what am I standing for? Then I've already lost. You know, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who's a Kenyan scholar who I love, talks about colonialism as being a cultural bomb. It annihilates your language, it annihilates your beliefs, it annihilates your values, and it seeks to annihilate your unity. And that, for me, in the Canto RIMPAC poem, I found so much joy in finding unity and in creating solidarities. And when we create those solidarities, we are so much stronger, and we are showing the world that we are still here. And there is so much joy in that. So even with the heaviness, I maintain that we have to create that joy. And that poem makes me cry, it makes me weep, and it reminds me of the heaviness, but it reminds me of the joy and solidarity. And again, that joy is a responsibility and it's a necessity. We need it. So anytime we can be part of creating it, that's what we have to do.
Ew!
Yeah, I mean, the same. That was great. But no, I love Watiango as well. I love his writing, and I thank you for sharing that. I'm preaching to the choir with this panel, but you know, when you look at, I get on my soapbox all the time and think about, you look at California wildfires, and then you talk about the First Nations people who said, you know, we had a way to deal with this. You know, eons ago, before our lands were taken from us, et cetera, et cetera. And I say that to say there's a blueprint that Native people have had that deal with anything. And you know, trauma is one of those things. And when you look at the films that are in this, you know, program together, I mean, like a big tenet of our culture is aloha aina, which is coming together to take care of our land and stuff, but it's all really about community. And so we do these things together. We're not solitary people. So when, you know, you look at the water protectors and all the thousands of people that went there, and then you look at the Mauna, which they share, and, you know, their story, and all the people that answered the call to come, we don't face trauma alone. We do it together. And I think that's what this program is so good in showing.
Thank you to all of you that was wonderful. And we have two people who are coming in. We have Bex Arahanga from Guam, who was the director of Hinakura. And we also have Mikey Inoue, who is calling in from Hawaii, and directed the Cancel Impact poem. So Bex and Mikey, do you mind introducing yourself and answering the question?
Kia ora, everyone. I'm Bex Arahanga. I'm from New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm the writer-director of Hinakura. It's a privilege to be screening her amongst all of your beautiful mahi, beautiful work. I just had a little peek at the question. Film trauma. Amazing answers, by the way. You beautiful humans. So my film's set in 1600s Aotearoa. So it was supposed to be pre-colonial because we've lost so many of our ways, and we've also got one of the highest rates of suicide and teen pregnancy and blah 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 and blah blah blah. But that's not who we truly are. You know, we're so far away. I love what you're saying, Bryson, about Indigenous wisdom. Because I think when we tap into that Indigenous wisdom, you know, it's in our DNA, it's in our cellular memory anyway. And so when we reignite that and awaken that in ourselves, we heal, you know, we heal within that process. And, you know, we totally do have humor. I can go to Indigenous festivals around the world and watch films from other nations and everyone's laughing at the same stuff, you know. So I think that's something that we share as a commonality. Yeah, I just think that when we tell our stories, it's healing, it's medicine.
Thank you, Bex.
Mikey.
Hey everyone, it's nice to see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a while too. It's hard to say anything Emalani didn't already say. I really love the idea of needing to find joy, even when we have to spread like a very, you know, difficult message about all of the terrible things that are being done, you know, to the planet and to its protectors. I always kind of go back to when I'm working on stuff like this, like just the idea. I think it was Mark Fisher who said, like, it's like for a lot of people, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And I think that applies to a lot of things like colonialism and imperialism. And like, I think like, yeah, like Emalani was saying about like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, like one of like the main like purposes of the cultural bomb is to like kind of like destroy your imagination too. And to make it seem like the biggest hope that you can have is to just kind of like find like your little spot in empire to occupy. And so like I think one of our main goals in the Council of Impact poem was to try to imagine our way out of it, you know, like to because like it's very easy to kind of like point to the source of the problem, but it's like I think it's like a real act of resistance, especially when it comes to like creating art and creating like resistance art to try to imagine futures out of it, because that's the thing that really scares them the most. Like they like it's so easy for like capitalism to kind of like absorb its own critique, but it's much harder and it's much more dangerous to actually like, you know, reckon with possibilities outside of our current My hair's gotten pretty long. I miss you guys too. Oh wait, I think that's the private message. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And we only have 5 minutes left. So our last question for y'all today is, currently we're seeing an ascent and more recognition given to Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander film and filmmakers. And so we were wondering, could you all tell us more about how you found community, created community, and how did you draw power and strength from your communities in the making of your films, and how do you seek to continue this community building through your future work? And feel free to promote your future work as well.
I defer to Mikey to answer this one. I feel like he did such a great job on the Mauna, creating the media center and being just so supportive of everyone coming to the Mauna. So we defer to you to answer this one.
Oh, I was gonna be quiet. So sorry. The question was like, what's next?
Okay, so there were 2 parts of the question. So the first part of the question is, how did you all in all of your films find community, and like how did you draw from the community, the power of your community for your films, and how did you? And then the second part of the question is, what do you hope to do with the community in your future work?
Yeah. I mean, like from the get, like Jelena and I and like so many other people, we were already sharing like footage, just like hard drive, just like handing out in like the Hunter Station in the Pu'uhonua, when all the stuff on the mountain was going down. And then like, yeah, like Havane was like just like so open with working with us too, and Antipua and everybody. Like it was like a real like creative kind of, almost like a Creative Commons. Like we all had our own stories to tell, but they were all very much connected. And then yeah, like after a lot of us came down from the Mauna, like we had like other things that needed to be done, and so like that's kind of like how the Council Impact Coalition formed. And we were trying to figure out like what were some good ways to address it, and we learned a lot from the Mauna and like the Mauna media team that we had kind of formed, like effective ways to reach people who were either like plugged in but didn't know what to do, or just had never heard of RIMPAC, or or even like why imperialism is bad. Yeah, there's a lot that we're working on in terms of like kind of creating art and film messaging that's resisting kind of the current structures, but also building new ones. One of them is the Young Futures project that I'm working on. I mean the Just Futures project that I'm working on with Amy Peruso, where we're doing a lot of film profiles on young organizers from all different circles. So I'm excited about that, but I'm way more excited to hear what everyone else is working on.
Oh, sorry, could we actually have Bex speak? Because we didn't hear too much from you, but we're really curious about. Oh, sorry, I guess we only have 1 more minute, but Bex, I'm really curious about how your community came together to create this film, because your film is entirely, there's no English at all. There's no other language at all. And how did you pull from all the community histories, the oral histories? Like, how did your community do all this research to pull your film together?
Great question. So we've got a really good Indigenous community, filmmaking community here in New Zealand. We all support each other. Well, the difficult thing was trying to find locations that hadn't been colonized, like with pine trees and grass and stuff like that. And there's not very many places. And so I had to go to different tribes and different tribal areas. And they pretty much were like, what's the story? Okay, sis, let me take you here. Does that work? I was like, yes. Oh my God. So I found the locations like that. Another man that I met who'd been building ancient, had brought back the land and had been building the ancient old houses that we used to have back in the 1500s on that land. And so we kind of built a few others and we shot there. And then it rained, like we had mud up to here. during the shoot. It was so dangerous. It was on the side of a hill. It was like a nightmare, but it made it look amazing, you know, like stuff like that. So she got really supported, and every one of the characters that, every one of the actors that played the role, there was only actually one actor. Everyone else had never acted before. But they really embodied their character, and they were all fluent speakers of Te Reo Māori. So that was some of them, it's their first language. They'd only learned to speak English like when they were 11 or 12 kind of thing. And it's also, I mean, I'm a female filmmaker and I'm a mother. I've got 4 grandchildren. I've got 5 children. So, you know, we bring our babies with us. So I had one mama, she was pregnant when I cast her. She had Pepe, she had baby. And then, you know, we were like, bring baby. So we looked after baby while she did her scenes. And then we did the costume where she could get her titi out and feed Pepe and then put it back into her scene. You know, like that's how we make films, is we do prayer, we work with the ancestors, we make sure that it's our tikanga, our cultural practices first and filmmaking second. And we make sure that everyone comes out of the experience empowered and safe, because we were working with spiritual, you know, we were reinstating the divine feminine back into these land that had been dominated by male energy, you know, so there's a lot of stuff going on. At one point the lights just went off, the generator went off, and we couldn't light it anymore, and we had to get someone to come and do a karakia to the cave, because she was a feminine cave, and because she had all these men been in there, and as soon as the karakia finished, the generator started up again. Like, we had stuff like that going on, so we had to make sure that our tikanga and our wairua spiritual stuff was you know, our base that we worked from, and then there was filmmaking after that. And it's all about building capacity as well. So it's bringing in people into different departments so that they're learning, you know, so you're doing what you're doing, but you're also mentoring and empowering within that role, and sort of having some more patience and, you know, like, you know, allowing for that time for people to be growing into that space. And quite a few of them have gone on to be in TV and film now, which has been really, really cool.
Well, I think, unfortunately, this has been a great conversation so far, so thank you all. But unfortunately, we are actually 3 minutes over time. But thank you to everyone for coming in and joining us today. If tickets to Joy to Be Your Ancestors will be are available, and all the films are available until November 15th. And also, please check out the rest of the Pacific Showcase, because we have a great short selection of films. But thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You say this kill, black and brown, and when will you talk about class in this story? The rest is allegory. Come together, unionize, see it through each other's eyes. No need to fight over supplies while workers save lives. They need protection too. What we gonna do? Organize our way through. And for those behind bars, we must fight hard. Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No equality, no quality of life.